trick in making my love stick? What's the trick?
Hello, and welcome to Film Critic and the Common Man podcast. While other film podcasts might go on a Lebanese vacation, we make sure to destroy America's enemies while we're there. Every episode, while discussing a film from the perspective of every episode, we discuss a film from the perspective of a film critic and the perspective of a common man. We may not agree, but certainly won't be boring. I'm your co-host, Ben Miller. I'm a film critic and I write about my own films for my own site, Ice Cream for Freaks. I'm joined by my brother and common man co-host. Hey, that's Enrico Palazzo. Jake Miller, how you doing, buddy?
How you doing? I'm doing all right. Hello, everyone.
Hello. This is the last episode in the month of May. This is our last of our listeners' choice episodes. Should be a lot of fun as we get into this one. Before we do get into it, want to say a special thanks to one of our listeners, Mr. David Rosen, for picking this one for me. David is an awesome guy, a musician and podcaster. He's the host of the Piecing It Together podcast, a podcast I've been on a couple times, where he talks about the influences from other that movies take from other movies. Like every action movie is a Die Hard ripoff, stuff like that. He's also the producer of the Awesome Movie Year podcast. He's a guest host on numerous other shows. You can find him on Twitter at by David Rosen, his podcast Piecing Together Pod at Piecing Pod, and his the show he produces, Awesome Movie Year, Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter. He has his own website. You can listen to all his composed music and all his stuff by davidrosen.com. An awesome guy, and we really appreciate his patronage, and please check out all his podcasts and all his stuff as well.
Yeah, definitely check him out. I just briefly looked at his stuff. It looks pretty great. So he's always a really great guest, very professional and always fun, and a lot of content out there. So please go check that out. His pick today, a fun pick. I'm very excited we get to talk about this. We're talking The Naked Gun, The Files from the Police Squad, directed by David Zucker, written by Jerry Zucker, David Zucker, Jim Abrams, and Pat Proft, based on Police Squad, the television show by Zucker, and Abrams, starring Leslie Nielsen, Priscilla Presley, George Kennedy, Ricardo Montalban, and the one and only O.J. Simpson. Co-starring Nancy Marchand, Ray Burke, Jeanette Charles, Ed Williams, with cameos galore from Weird Al Yankovic, John Houseman, Dr. Joyce Brothers, and of course Reggie Jackson. Opened on December 2nd, 1988. Solid box office for just a silly comedy. 78.7 million US, 73.7 international, 152.4 million on a $12 million budget. No awards attention. But this is not the kind of movie that you really care about awards attention. So I'm sure nobody's exactly disappointed. There have been three. This is the first in a series. There are three Naked Gun movies: the Naked Gun 2.5, The Smell of Fear, and Naked Gun 33 1/3, The Final Insult. Supposedly they're going to make another one, but we'll get into that later. So this is coming out in 1988, despite the kind of silly comedy that it is, 86% on Rotten Tomatoes for critics, 84 for audiences too. So I mean, everybody's kind of in agreement. It's like, hey, this is what it is, and it's nice that everybody gets on the same page. Quickly, I will go through a quick plot summary. It follows Police Squad Lieutenant Freight Drebin. Opening in the film, he's on vacation in Beirut, as one does, and he destroys a conference of America's enemies, including Idi Amin, Gaddafi, Ayatollah Khomeini, Yasser Arafat, Fidel Castro, and Mikhail Gorbachev, who he wipes off his birthmark. Yes. Yep. He's able to get away and success. And remember, this is don't mess with America, essentially. Meanwhile, back in LA, Drebin goes to LA and is debriefed by his police captain that his friend Norberg, played by O.J. Simpson, tries to bust a drug deal, and he is shot multiple times, hits himself incredible. The joke being that O.J. Simpson is invincible, apparently.
But
well,
literally the guy is Teflon apparently. But anyway, Norberg foils this drug deal, but at the same time is almost killed. He's in a coma. So Frank wants to try to find out what's going on with his partner. His jacket tests positive for heroin. Meanwhile, police squad, where Frank is a part of, is put in charge of security for the upcoming visit of Queen Elizabeth II to Los Angeles. Ed Hocken, who is the great George Kennedy, our second George Kennedy film, by the way.
Yes, yeah,
that's right.
That was the first.
Yes, that's right. I'll talk a little bit about him in a little bit too, but so he's like, you got to clear Norberg before Queen Elizabeth II gets here because we got to focus on all that. He visits people to figure out about Norberg and all that kind of stuff, and then he runs afoul of businessman Vincent Ludwig, played by Ricardo Montalban. Ludwig decides to send his secretary Jane Spencer, played by Priscilla Presley, to seduce Frank and get close to him and essentially see how close they get. So in the process, Ludwig is discovered to be a part of everything. Frank finds this information, but accidentally catches the information on fire and burns down his apartment. The mayor gets upset, and then Frank accidentally tackles the queen whenever he misinterprets a gift. So he is shunned from Queen Elizabeth and Ludwig in general, and so he has to sneak into the Angel Stadium on the day of a baseball game that Queen Elizabeth is attending. And he becomes a Pavarotti-esque singer and sings the national anthem very terribly. And then masks himself as an umpire to check the players, realizing that Ludwig can brainwash a player. Despite checking them all, it turns out Reggie Jackson is the player who gets brainwashed in a big melee. Jackson is about to shoot the queen, but Drebin uses his cufflinks to accidentally tranquilize a large lady who falls on him and saves the day. Ludwig is able to escape with Jane, but he shoots him with the other cufflink. He falls off the edge of the stadium. He is run over by a bus. Then he is trampled by the USC marching band. Steamroller, the USC marching band. He's definitely dead. Jane is inadvertently brainwashed and told to kill Frank, but then he proposes to him. And he proposes to her and gets her out of her brainwashing. Norberg shows up at the end, and everything goes well as Norberg is his wheelchair goes down the stadium steps to end the movie. It's just a big silly fun. It's like there's like it sounds like a lot of plot. It's just essentially the plot is excuses to get you in these situations that are stupid.
Yes.
Like like what's the dumbest possible thing? It's like, oh well, Queen Elizabeth could visit a baseball game, and what could we do from there? Essentially, like plot doesn't matter. Queen,
like participate in a wave and like pass down beers and hot dogs. Like,
I really like the guys sitting in her seats before they got there.
Oh yeah, they're like sitting there drinking beer and smoking and
I mean
that. Yeah.
So we haven't ever done a spoof movie before, but I mean this is from the same team that did Airplane. It's where they get Leslie Nielsen from. It's
of course.
It's and it's just nonstop. There's always something. Like even if there's not doing something, like my favorite running joke is Drebin constantly running into things with his car.
He is absolutely the worst driver ever.
Absolutely.
But it is so hilarious. I love whenever his airbags go off and he doesn't put it in park and he's shooting at his own car. He's like, anyone get that plate?
Did I get that plate?
You see the driver?
Yeah, I agree. It's one of those, like, Leslie Nielsen is kind of perfect for so before Airplane, Leslie Nielsen was a very straightforward, like regular actor. And then they put him in Airplane. And the reason he's so good at what he does in Airplane is because everybody in Airplane plays it really straight. And and all the things that he's really, really good at in this movie, he plays super straight. When he gets a little like muggy, it's kind of where the movie kind of loses me a little bit. Like whenever, I mean, it's so ridiculous and everything like that, but him acting like he, at one point he's talking about, oh, you're not gonna be a cop anymore. He's like, oh no, the next time I
love that.
Next time I shoot somebody, I'll go to jail. Like,
yeah.
I was like, he says it so straight faced. I was like, yes, this is exactly what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I really like that line.
Yeah. So, but the
next time I shoot someone, I might go to jail.
The great thing about this movie, it's 84 minutes long. Like,
yeah.
There is zero reason for this movie to be longer than it is. And it is wall-to-wall jokes. There is no like, oh, let's add a little bit of in it. No,
there's no heavy moment.
There's no heavy moment. There's no like, no, it's just
pure comedy.
And from the jump, like the opening titles. I mean, he beats up Gaddafi and Amin in the first minutes, and then the opening titles where it's like in a women's locker room, and it's a roller coaster. You're just like, okay, you're already on board with this is what this movie is going to be.
It's going to be goofy,
and it doesn't disappoint at any point.
Yeah, and I like goofy, funny movies. I mean, lighthearted. You don't have to,
Yes.
It's like Mrs. Doubtfire,
yes.
Which we did last week.
Mm-hmm.
It's hilarious, but as we mentioned in that, there's a heavy undertone there. With this, it's just goofing off. We're just having fun here. And that's nice. It's refreshing sometimes. You know?
There's literally like, you're not going into it with any sort of other expectations. And if you go in, you're like, well, the plot is like, plot mechanisms don't matter because everything's so stupid. It's like, well, it's like you literally had poison dart cufflinks at the climax of the movie. Poison dart cufflinks gets a fat woman on the second row. She falls off, squishes the actual Reggie Jackson, stopping him from assassinating Queen Elizabeth II. That sentence in general was the actual thing that happened in this movie. And there's no
that should tell you everything you need to know.
Exactly. So I would imagine anybody who's like, is like, well, it's stretched, like you have to go into this movie knowing what you're expecting. And this is so stupid. It was great. Top to bottom. Stupid humor is great humor because
absolutely.
Like some of this stuff is, some of the things they throw in there is pretty smart. Like just think next time I shoot somebody, I get arrested, or it's like, well, I see 5 weirdos dressed in togas stabbing a guy in the middle of the park full of 100 people. I shoot the bastards. That's my policy. It's like, it's like
it was a Shakespeare reenactment.
You killed 5 actors, good ones. Yeah. So, I mean, yes, there's,
one I picked up on, is whenever they're visiting Nordberg, in the hospital at first. And the doctor says, Mrs. Norberg, I think we can save your husband's arm. Where would you like it sent? like
just those little throwaway things like that.
But it was just a sideline. It's easy to miss. But there's so many little things that just little one-liners that are, it's kind of like the surely you're kidding.
Exactly.
I'm not kidding. Please don't call me Shirley, or something to that effect.
And then that same
an airplane. That's from Airplane, not
that same thing is like, okay, well, Norberg, they're trying to, it's like, let's not freak her out. And it's like, who could have done this? And he's like, a roving gang of thugs, a blackmailer, an angry husband, a gay lover, like just and
I've like he's just got diarrhea of the mouth
pretty much. And I mean, you look just it's more nonstop than anything else. Like just there just is, and every more ridiculous thing, like it's like, oh, all the cop stuff You're like, well, a cop was like, yeah, of course, a cop could not actually do this. It's like he beat up all of America's enemies in the first 2 minutes of this movie. What do you? Yeah. So, yeah. Do you want to take a dinghy? No, I took care of that at the press conference. Just stuff like that. Just throwaway lines. There's almost too much. So, give me some other ones that you really had. Did you really were liking?
I really liked when they go to like the crime lab, and it's like whenever the scientist, I think it was kind of a play on James Bond, like where they have the Swiss Army shoe.
Oh yeah,
that has all the, James Bond always did that, where he had his guy that was like, oh, it looks like a cufflink, but it does this and that. But the scientist or whatever tells him to look under a microscope, and he does this. And then George Kennedy is getting up from accident or from the scientist.
Oh man, that was great.
Yeah.
Let's try it on the captain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was like, use your open eye, Frank. And he's like, oh, I can see it now.
All those
was like,
it's funny.
And then he's talking to him still like this, and he kind of has to.
It's funny. All the people in this movie who get all of the jokes. George Kennedy plays it pretty straight. He doesn't really. He does. I mean, but he's still with the tone of it all. Like he's still on board with the tone. I read a thing about this movie. Essentially, they were like, "Hey, we wanted." Like the producer said, well, we kind of need a name. I want an Oscar winner. I thinking they would come up with somebody else, and they went like, look at George Kennedy in here. It's like, so it's like, well, technically he's an Oscar winner. So, I mean, it's just kind of a silly thing to throw in there.
He adapted well to the comedic environment.
He did.
You know what I mean?
He's kind of got that boisterous comedic tone to him anyway. It's like, I thought he was, I mean, as good as he is in Cool Hand Luke, it's the kind of that jolly tone that he's able to maintain.
Sure.
Ricardo Montalban also in this movie, you're just like, it's you can see like, man, these are serious actors. Why are they in this movie? It's like, man, I bet they had a blast. It's like just all these.
They had to have fun. I mean,
much fun in this thing.
It had to be like, whenever you're a kid going to school. Absolutely. And it's field day or you have a field trip or something.
Yep.
Like, I feel like, they must have been like, okay, cool. We can just have fun with this. And everyone looks like they're enjoying it.
I always think to myself, it's like, man, how hard would it be to kind of keep a straight face in certain things in this movie? Like whenever Drebin is breaking up with Jane, and before he goes, like, by the way, I faked every orgasm. It's like, how are you able to like do that kind of stuff? So I remember watching this as a kid, and I never really understood it. But watching it as an adult, it's even funnier. So whenever they're having their montage set to Herman's Hermits, complete with the credits in the corner. They're doing all their stuff, and they're coming out of a movie just laughing hysterically, and it goes up and says Platoon.
Yes.
As a kid, I'm just like, I don't know why that's funny, and I think our mom's like, well, it's a serious movie. And now after seeing Platoon, it's even funnier. You're just like, oh, can you imagine coming out of Platoon, especially the ending
laughing.
Of Platoon?
Yeah. So. Well, and I also loved like they come out of the movie and they say goodnight to each other, and it was like they had like that montage is like weeks of life experience, and they're like, I had a great day.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I only met you yesterday.
Yeah. Always.
I only met you yesterday.
All those little throwaway lines, those are always the fun ones. I mean, I'm sure this hits close to home, buddy, because this is like, cops are a great send up target, and it's easy to be like, these idiots, let's show these idiots at work. And I mean,
it's Keystone Cops.
Sure.
And it is an easy setting.
Yeah.
To play with. And I think it's just because cops are they're presented with the most extreme, most ridiculous situations that society has to offer.
Yeah.
And when they screw up, it's real bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you make it funny, I mean, it's a great comedic setting.
Sure.
I think well,
it's kind of
there's a lot you can do with that.
Well, it's kind of like the reason, why are there so many cop and lawyer and medical shows? It's because these experiences are built in to be like, you don't have to remember what you did last week, and you can essentially build a brand new thing every single week in something new. And with cops, you can essentially do the same thing comedically, because it's like you just have a normal situation, be it drug muling or wanting to kill like an assassination plot or whatever it is, and you can essentially wrap it so ridiculously to make it comedic. And so it makes sense. Like there should be like it's too easy of a target. And the good thing this movie does is I always like comedies that punch up, like as opposed to like lowest common denominator of jokes. Even with the jokes they have, it's like they just kind of point out how ridiculous everybody is taking this. It's like how ridiculous, like how the idea of how ridiculous being a cop actually is.
Right. Yeah. And the idea of the Queen is made fun of.
Sure.
Cops are made fun of.
The mayor, all the aristocracy of LA, and
and I kind of think the reason certain professions probably make up a big portion of movies is because I think these are experiences that the average person will never experience. They don't understand it. They're not going to be a doctor. They're not going to be a lawyer. They're not going to be a firefighter. They're not going to be a cop.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of this unknown thing that they can kind of tap into. And in the case of this movie, we can laugh at it. We can punch up, like you said.
Yeah.
We can punch up. We can make fun of the Queen. We can make fun of cops. We can,
and at the same time,
make fun of a city.
You can just essentially like, okay, well, there's this profession that it's kind of unknowable and inaccessible. It's like, let's make it accessible through the sake of comedy. Just as like, it's like it's a good way to kind of come into that. There are some pretty awesome cameos top to bottom in this thing. Did you have a personal favorite?
Weird Al Yankovic.
Right at the beginning, like it must be peak Weird Al time. Like, because, by the way,
what was this? 98?
88. So
88.
This is around like Eat It time. Like Michael Jackson, like his parodies are like super, super popular. So apparently the third base umpire in the baseball game is Joe West.
Okay.
The announcers at the baseball game, I don't know why they were all there. Kirk Gowdy, Jim Palmer, Tim McCarver, Mel Allen, Dick Enberg, Dick Vitale, a guy who has never done baseball in his life, and then Dr. Joyce Brothers.
I loved that.
Just why is she there? Who knows? My personal favorite, another Oscar winner, Mr. John Houseman, as the austere British driving instructor.
That was great.
That was great.
The whole time he's like, apply brake. There's
brake.
Like a semi coming at him.
Apply brake, and very just baritone. His trademark. It's like extend hand.
She's covered in glass, like broken glass and stuff.
Extend middle finger. Like, I really enjoyed all. And then, all the while, he's shooting a gun right next to her ear, and he's just calmly like.
She rolls up the window.
Great little, like, it's just kind of the fun of it. And it was like, well, again, you're like, why would John Houseman be in this movie? He's like, why would he not be in this movie? He didn't even take a credit. Like,
Why not?
You take those levels and the actual Reggie Jackson
Yes.
being Reggie Jackson is pretty awesome. Like, and
I had forgotten about that.
And it's like, it's kind of funny. You're like, as a baseball fan, you're like, I don't think Reggie Jackson ever played for the Angels. It's like, but and then also famously non-self-aware, very a humorless man, from what I understand. Apparently. But I mean, just the idea of like
Reggie Jackson kills the Queen of England, and like just that premise is.
By the way, I had to check like twice. I had to check twice in the credits. I'm like, it's not the actual Queen of England, right? Like, it looks just like her. It's a lady named Jeanette Charles, but it was like, well, it's one of those things. It's like, well,
the late Queen.
So, fun fact: she has the reason she looks so much like the Queen is because that's what she did. She's an actress who played the Queen. She was She was in National Lampoon's European Vacation as Queen Elizabeth. She was in this as Queen Elizabeth. She was in the Parent Trap remake, the one with Lindsay Lohan, as Queen Elizabeth. She was an Austin Powers and Goldmember as Queen Elizabeth. This was her thing. This was her aisle.
She found a niche.
Yes.
And ran with it.
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, she was on a and she was on like she was on British television. Every time she's on British television, she's playing Queen Elizabeth. She was in an episode of Saturday Night Live as Queen Elizabeth. Like, it's just you want to talk about being typecast, and who cares? Like,
well, shit. I mean, if you're naturally gifted in something, then hey,
work with what you got.
Exactly. Do
you remember any of the sequels?
No, I don't think I've seen any of the sequels. I think I've only seen the original.
I might have seen them, but I'm not sure I could tell you anything specific about them. Like, I remember the things I remember from this is like when I was a kid, not understanding why Platoon was funny, and then all the stuff going up. Yeah. Okay. Now the best part of this movie is the baseball scene.
Yeah.
As soon as he becomes, by the way, I got some good chuckles out of his not far off, but close Star Spangled Banner. It was bad, but I mean, the words wise, just like he just missed it by a little bit, but it was enough to make me laugh.
Yeah. It was like, Roseanne Barr doing it infamously.
No. Yeah. But so he becomes the umpire, and just the entire time of go ahead.
I think he was a better umpire than Angel Hernandez.
Jake, that's not, you want to talk about hot takes? That's a freezing cold take. It's like saying Leslie Nielsen and the Naked Gun is better than Angel Hernandez is. Like, Joe West is in this movie and he's still and Leslie Nielsen's probably the third best umpire.
No kidding. No, just look up on YouTube Angel Hernandez bad calls or awful umpire.
It's not
He's got a reputation.
It's not one video. It's
no. There's a catalog out there.
It's funny. I was actually thinking this. I was like, okay, I'm not going to look too deep into the themes of Naked Gun. But the idea of like whenever he's the umpire and he's strike and everybody, and it's just like, hey man, that power corrupts. He's like, just then obviously
dancing, doing the splits and
oh yeah, and then. It was funny. I remember it. I was like, oh, it must have just been an at bat. And then I'm watching the movie and I'm like, oh, he's the umpire this whole game.
Yeah. And then he throws the other umpires out.
But then I think it might not have been Joe West, but whoever the other umpire was when they were getting the guy in the pickle, that umpire, he was like flinging those balls at him. I was like, ooh, it's like good thing he has a big chest protector. But I was like, keep thinking that like, it's just so fun. Like, it's just like, of all the stupid stuff, there's like, I think they voted this, from what I understand, they said it was it was voted one of the best baseball movies ever, just for this little scene.
Really?
Apparently, it's like, well, that scene's so memorable. Like, just the
I like when the benches clear and they all pile up, and it's just like literally a mound of people just hitting each other. It's like I've about seen that.
I mean, so that's a question. So just this is completely off topic, but so whenever you think of a baseball fight, is there one specific you think of?
Oh, it's got to be the King of Kings is Nolan Ryan.
Nolan Ryan and Robin Ventura.
Yeah. When he gets him in a headlock and just waylays him. That's got to be the best one. Like,
I'll give you a little piece of trivia, folks, if y'all don't know this about that game. So Robin Ventura was ejected from the game for charging the mound. Nolan Ryan, never leaving the mound, was not ejected. Didn't have to leave. So despite him hitting Robin Ventura, since he was ejected, his pinch runner went over to first. Nolan Ryan picked off the runner at first and did not allow a batter on base for the rest of the game.
Yep.
It's such a fun little piece of trivia. You're just like, man, that guy's it's a different, by the way, he was 40, 41.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, well, what's funny is I remember I was watching that particular game as a kid, and Mom said, shut it off. You got to go to bed. Okay. Went to bed, got up the next morning, and she's got the newspaper, like front pages.
Yeah. You're just like,
that infamous shot. I was like,
and especially as a kind of the wanton destruction that is being a young boy, you're just like, oh, it's the only thing I wanted in the world was some violence. Like, the only thing I wanted to see.
Like, how did you make me miss that?
There was I'll tell you one I remember. So this was early 2000s. There's a first base coach for the Royals, and a guy and his son decided, for some reason, they wanted to come down the field and attack him. I think they might have tried to stab him. So they come into the field on the first during the game and attack him, and the entire Royals team comes out and just pummels these guys.
I'm sure.
It's like, okay, we got the knife away. Okay, that's taken care of. I mean, these guys got
street justice
destroyed. Yes. And I like those type of things are always fun whenever it's like, I was once at a bar and a man had hit a woman in this bar, and one of the patrons essentially had to stop a bunch of people from killing this guy. He said all the while he's like has him pinned, like his hands behind his neck, and it's like, guys, let's not, like, all the while putting a little extra oomph into this guy.
Oh yeah.
It's like it's yeah, like you said, those baseball, like hockey always has like the visceral, like that's what you expect. When it happens in baseball, you don't really expect it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think the thing I like about baseball fights is when benches clear, that's my teammate. I don't care if he's right or wrong. He's on my team.
It's very much,
I'm going out there and doing battle.
It's very much a prison mentality. It's like, I'm with this group. We're fighting this group.
With this gang.
Why are you fighting them? I don't know. They have problems. Doesn't matter. He's my boy. I got to go in there and start. Yeah. And I had
just blind loyalty.
My my former boss was a Major League Baseball pitcher in the 70s. He was good friends with Raleigh Fingers, and he said in these games, baseball was on TV, but there was 4 games a week on TV, and it was always on the weekends. So there were fights all the time, and they were never televised because there were no really consequences. He's like, I'll tell you about a fight. It's like, once the bench is clear, because somebody did something, Raleigh Fingers did something and somebody didn't like it. So Raleigh Fingers chased this guy into the outfield. This guy runs away. Raleigh Fingers takes a ball and hits it right in his back. He said, just like he got shot. And he said, the guy falls to his knees. It's like, of course he got ejected, but I mean, it's just
worth it.
Yeah, exactly. I can imagine just and these
there's sometimes you got to say, I know I'm getting ejected. I know I'm getting fined. I'm potentially getting suspended, but I'm doing this.
I mean, if that happened,
right.
If that were to happen in today's game, and somebody turns around and a pitcher punks him in the back, it's like, that guy's not going to play for the rest of the season. Like, they're not. At least he's going to be made an example out of.
Yes.
Like, and I know me and you, the Rangers fans, of the Roughneck Odor punch to the face. That was that was a good fight.
That
was a real good one.
Dude, he rocked Bautista.
Rocked that guy. So I mean,
you could see his legs go out for a sec.
I'll post it up here because that's a classic. Like
that's a great fight.
That's and you want to talk about like HD video cameras. They're like, let's check the slow motion of this. Wonderful. We're so far.
You can see his legs buckle. I know. We're talking baseball.
Who cares? Who cares? Whatever. Naked Gun. We'll take a quick break. All right, we are back. Every week I go through the filmography of a filmmaker and put Jake's cinematic knowledge to the test. It is time for Pull for a Dumbass. This week, though, not going to an actual, give yourself a little more credit than that, but I'm not an actual filmmaker or an actor. We're going to talk police comedies throughout the years, a number of them, and I wanted to keep this list as broad as I could, so I didn't not spoof comedies or anything like that. And it's and the word comedy is kind of vague here and there when it comes to some of these, but we will get into it as we come along. It's not a spoof, but it somehow is less of a comedy than The Naked Gun. How about the classic Steve Guttenberg starring Police Academy? Yes. I know I've seen it. I cannot tell you a single thing about it.
I'm pretty foggy on it. It's been that long.
I mean, not even it's that's one of that. Police Academy was the joke about, it's these things are cheap to make, so they made 7 or 8 of them or whatever that. And if you say, tell me a joke from Police Academy, I couldn't tell you a joke from any of them.
Not really,
but I mean,
now I couldn't either.
Now, but you have seen it as so when I talk about police comedies, this is the one that I'm the closest to. I don't know how much you technically call this a comedy, though there are some comedic aspects. How about Lethal Weapon?
Yes.
If you go back and watch that movie, Mel Gibson has the same hair your mom had in the 90s, that big feathery mullet
thing.
So the first one is pretty serious, but after that it gets much more humorous. Lethal Weapon, Mel Gibson wants to kill himself this entire movie in the first one.
Yes, absolutely. He's dealing with his he had a wife die. But at the same time, it still has, there's comedic tone to it. It's still fun and still funny.
The second, third, and fourth ones are much more broadly comic.
Yes. Yeah.
But still, I just wanted to include that one. Now, you want to talk about a classic cop comedy, and talk about jokes a minute, and the perfect example of a star making this movie go, Beverly Hills Cop.
Of course.
Beverly Hills Cop is hilarious. And
it is.
And Eddie Murphy at the absolute apex of what he's doing at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, he is, everything he said is hilarious. Everything. And I love that the two cops, John Aston and Judge Reinhold, as this two cop buddies. I mean, everything about it. It's just top to bottom.
It's hilarious. I mean, it's like The Naked Gun. Let's take a serious subject and just completely make fun of it.
But it has some serious parts to it. It's actually a kind of Oscar nominee, 2 Oscar nominations, by the way, for that movie.
Oh, wow.
Best original song for a song I don't think there is any words to. Ba, 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 da, ba, 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 da.
Yes,
Um,
of course.
and
Yeah.
and best original screenplay, which might as well give it to Eddie Murphy, because it's kind of like, oh, let's give Mrs. Doubtfire an Oscar nomination for screenplay. Like, okay, but how much of the writing was actually Robin Williams?
Yeah.
So I mean, but Beverly Hills Cop is great. Yeah. So
yes, it is.
Sorry, it did not get an Oscar nomination for Best Original Song. Did it get original screenplay though? So, but it did win a Grammy. So, yeah. But Beverly Hills Cop's awesome. The other one, another one, one I have next. You might do really, really well on this quiz, by the way, as I'm looking at it. A television classic when we were kids. It was on a lot. I don't know how much we watched it all the way through, but we saw bits and pieces so often. Turner and Hooch.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love Turner and Hooch.
I love Turner and Hooch too.
Yeah.
I don't want to watch the end of it much.
No.
But I mean, the like the bulk middles of it, like you're like, okay, like I can get out, like Tom Hanks annoyed at a dog. It's
and I mean, it's very funny for much of it, but heavy ending, but it's kind of funny because the giant that Tom Hanks is, it's funny to analyze some of his early movies, because this was his like comeuppance, you know,
like this is, it's post,
when he was a rookie.
It's post big, but before he's like America's Dad. Like, so it's kind of that weird in between. I didn't have it on this list, but
it's pre-Philadelphia.
Yes, I didn't have it on this list, but did you see the movie Dragnet? It's him and Dan Aykroyd. I didn't have it on the list because I've seen it. It's silly, and it's just kind of like kind of what you expect from that kind of thing. Now, an entirely different type of cop comedy, an entirely different way, but a movie we watched 1,000 times when we were a kid, Kindergarten Cop.
Yeah. Who is your mommy and who is your daddy and what do they do?
It might have been my first introduction to Arnold Schwarzenegger in general as a kid. Like, because all the 80s action movies that he was in was not like, we weren't shielded from it, but it just wasn't something like, oh man, Schwarzenegger, like I never saw Commando. Predator wasn't until I was older. Like even Terminator 2, like that wasn't really our thing.
Yeah.
Kindergarten Cop was smack dab in the middle of, was like, this is okay. Like he has a silly voice. That not a tumor. Like that's all that stuff.
Not a tumor.
Yeah. Another really kind of dark, weird movie. Like the villain gets shot in a bathroom of an elementary school. Like there's some hard stuff going on there.
And that was kind of pre-school shooting.
That's early 90s.
It wasn't commonplace.
But
pre-Columbine, I guess.
Yes. So this next one, I don't know if you've seen it, but I like the original more than I like any of the sequels. It was the first. It was the world getting its first taste of Will Smith as an action star. How about the film Bad Boys?
Yes.
I like the original Bad Boys.
I do. I like the original.
The second and third.
I didn't.
The second one was ridiculous. The third one it's not really like the same type of movie. Like they tried to adjust with kind of, but yeah, the original, it's like the idea of it, and Will Smith is young and has energy, and Martin Lawrence one-liners left and right. Like it's just a fun little premise, and the action in it was good, and all the kind of it's interesting. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah,
good. Speaking of mismatched buddies, though, this is probably the best example of it. The original, you can say the second one as well. How about Rush Hour?
Yeah, I've seen both of them. Yeah,
I've never seen Rush Hour 3, but I've seen 1 and 2. The third one, I believe Roman Polanski's the villain.
Well, that's not acting.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, you got to play a creepy French guy. It's like, oh yeah, I'm sure that's tough.
Got it.
Yeah, got it down. But yeah, we were big Jackie Chan fans as kids because all those like dubbed over but set in America films like Rumble in the Bronx and stuff like that. It's like they were on TV a lot when we were kids, and and more than anything, we were like, man, he does some crazy stuff as a kid.
Jackie Chan's always entertaining, and he's funny, and I like the I guess cultural divide that they have to gap, you know.
Yeah, exactly. That's half the humor. Yeah, a lot of fun. I agree. How about a kind of flip of that? Undercover cop in a fun little way. How about Miss Congeniality?
Yeah. I think that was on a lot in Kuwait.
Kuwait classic, yes. I mean, it's hard to say that when was Sandra Bullock not great looking, but man, in that movie, she is on another level.
Yeah.
After the makeover, she's in that dress.
Yeah.
Woo.
Yep.
Woohoo. Yeah. It's hard not to like Sandra Bullock, but still.
Yeah.
Okay, so a different kind of closer to parody than most anything else. How about 2002 Super Troopers?
Yes.
It's when you think of like, okay, if the biggest idiots you know became cops, what would they do? And you're like, yeah, this is
that.
Like, oh yeah, they let you. I can't believe you guys get guns. Like, And but yeah. So, are you familiar with the Broken Lizard guys outside of Super Troopers?
Vaguely.
So did you see Beer Fest?
I didn't.
I've
heard of it.
Beer Fest is a lot of fun. It's like they can do a drinking competition in Germany, and they're prepping for it, and it's just a lot of fun. It's Super Troopers in a different setting, and I know there's Super Troopers 2, which I haven't seen. I don't. It's kind of like you talked about Anchorman. Like the second one, you're like, I like it didn't ruin it, but I want to keep the original, so I'm gonna probably stay away from Super Troopers. Okay.
Didn't they do a firefighter show?
They did. I think it's Tacoma FD.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I've heard some people who like it. I've never seen it, but I'm sure it's the same amount of stupid. It's essentially Super Troopers as firefighters.
As firefighters, yeah.
I know we've talked about this movie before, and it's not American cops, but British cops. How about Hot Fuzz?
Yes, love it.
Man, I love Hot Fuzz. And the cool thing about Hot Fuzz is it's like, okay, well, police comedies, they kind of have their levels of like, oh, it's this level of seriousness or this level. It's like Hot Fuzz's action is awesome. Like there are some really cool action set pieces in that movie.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's kind of like Beverly Hills Cop is like, it's hilarious throughout, but there's some real like action and
stakes. And also my favorite running joke of this movie is it's like at the end he gets in front of all the villains and covers this huge conspiracy about why it's all happening. And in reality, all these people have been killed for very arbitrary reasons. It's like, oh, because the land developed. And it's like, no, she had a bad laugh, and he was a bad actor. All those good reasons. Okay, so I know we talked about this one before, but it's probably the best example of Naked Gun adjacent. Like, how stupid are cops? It's The Other Guys.
Yeah, I love it. I completely love it. It's just so absurd.
Top to bottom, just.
Yeah, but it's hilarious.
Yes. And Despops and
man.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry for my wife's appearance. What a pig.
And
it's hottest you've ever seen Eva Mendes, and like,
oh my God.
oh yeah.
And then he used to be a pimp in college, and no, the desk pop became part of the vernacular at the police department.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So someone had a boo-boo, we'd call it a desk pop.
So Adam McKay movies, like previously, like he does the other guys, Anchorman, all that kind of stuff, the stupid. Then after other guys, he goes into The Big Short and Vice and Don't Look Now or Don't Look Up. But if you notice, the other guys is much closer to like the message of that movie, especially at the end with the end credits and kind of the pension stuff. It's much more like the message part of it than you realize the dumb comedy. And the whole time I'm like, I love the dumb comedy. It's like, but you had to throw this stuff in there. Like, it's like, come on, just like you can say that, like, you didn't have to all that kind of stuff. And you're like, okay, this is who this guy always was. He just,
I will say, I thought the most hilarious part of that movie was whenever The Rock and
Samuel Jackson
jump off the building.
To Hero by Foo Fighters.
Yeah. There goes my hero. And then the next scene, bagpipes, police funeral. And then they even say, like, I don't know what they were thinking. Like, they could,
really thought they were going to make it there for like, and yeah, that movie's great in general. Everything about it.
It's hilarious.
Really wonderful. I have one more for you. This is the only one. This is your chance. This is your chance at a perfect score. I don't know if you've seen this one. From the director of Bridesmaids and Sandra Bullock back again. Have you seen The Heat?
Yeah.
Okay. I like a perfect score. This has got to be your first one.
It's got to be.
It's only taken 47 episodes. So, I mean.
Well, I'm a late bloomer.
12 for 12. So I like The Heat. It's right on the verge of being too much, almost every single scene. Like where they take it to the edge, they push it a little further, and I'm like, okay, they need to stop, and they do. But I mean, it's right there where like improvisation, and Melissa McCarthy's great, Sandra Bullock's great, everybody in the movie's great, but I mean, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
it's on TV. It's on TV a lot.
Yeah, it's fun, but I agree it's on the edge of just silly.
It's also one of the most egregious. I'm a police officer, so I'm going to put a gun in your face movies. Right. And obviously, like you get the police comedies being what they are, and the reality of it is like, but I mean, the amount of people who are like, I'm not going to hurt you. It's like, what? Stop pointing a gun at me. Like, gun safety, not exactly great in those type of movies. But Jake, 12 for 12. Police Academy, Lethal Weapon, Beverly Hills Cop, Turner and Hooch, Kindergarten Cop, Bad Boys, Rush Hour, Miss Congeniality, Super Troopers, Hot Fuzz, The Other Guys, and The Heat. Well done, sir.
This is the best day I've had in a long time.
I was to say, you had a rough couple of weeks there for a little bit. Like, Vera Farmiga was real rough. Yeah. You had a good couple. There were some runs there. Like, you're doing pretty solid, but other ones not so much. But you've hit your apex.
Yes,
you're peaking at the right time.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think it's about that time, buddy.
Yeah, I agree. Man, I hate to break it to you, but I'll just tell you, you're in the hot box, man.
Each episode, instead of me steering the conversation, Jake peppers me with a series of questions that I must answer truthfully. Sometimes it's just trivia. Sometimes it's not. What you got for me?
All right. So other than this one, so this is a very slapstick comedy, physical comedy. Are there any other slapsticks, physical comedic movies that stand out to you as some of the greatest, like where, you're just watching people fall, hit their head?
Yeah. I mean,
that kind of thing.
Airplane being the primary
Mhm.
example. Obviously, that same. I mean, the throwaway stuff in Airplane is always so fun. And also, I watched the movie Airport the other day, which made Airplane all the more funnier because Airport was what it's kind of the disaster send up of all that and all that. So, I don't know if you've ever seen National Lampoon's Loaded Weapon, which is
I haven't.
It's like a Lethal Weapon parody. It's Samuel Jackson and Emilio Estevez.
Oh wow!
And and I mean, in one scene, Emilio Estevez like jumps into a 7-Eleven and like shoots out all the windows. And I think all he wanted was like a pack of gum. Like it's just, and then it's just that kind of fun send up. I love those just like out and out parody movies. I always like. I liked the first Scary Movie. The one the Wayans brothers did.
Yes.
The first one. And then they got really, really stupid as they went along. Like whenever the Wayans stopped being involved. And I think Leslie Nielsen became involved actually. But those early ones are great. But I mean, I always kind of default to just Airplane. Like it's hard to.
Yeah, that's hard to beat.
Yeah.
So in terms of physical comedy, along those same lines, who do you think are some of the greats as far as just being great at performing a clumsy idiot and making it hilarious?
So it's not even clumsy. Like, well, so I've always really been interested in like the people who are, we just talked about Melissa McCarthy. She's a good example of somebody who's like a bigger person who has a surprising amount of physicality. Yes. Chris Farley probably being the apex of that. Being like, I can't believe he's a big guy, but he can somehow do somersaults and just his infectious energy. I'll link the clip up here, but there's a clip of him being introduced at late night at David Letterman. And he runs from the back through the crowd, takes a guy, shakes him, puts him on his shoulder, throws him in a trash can, comes back in, does a couple of somersaults, and then sits down. Like that was just his introduction. It's insane. Yeah. But I mean, that level of commitment to it. I always think, whenever I think of physical comedy, I default to Jim Carrey in Liar Liar when he beats the hell out of himself in the bathroom. I mean,
that's pretty epic.
Yeah. The level of commitment it takes, not only the oh, I'm going to do this for the laugh, but it's like, oh, I'm going to stretch my body and put myself through physical pain, like smushing his face in the toilet seat.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to hurt myself.
And that last bit of that where he throws himself against the wall and then plops on the ground. There's no like, oh, I'm going to protect my head. He's like, I'm going for it. And where I land is where I'm going to land. And that's the one I always go to of being like, my God, the commitment, just the willingness to go for the bit.
Yeah. In that scene, like someone walks in the bathroom and they're like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm beating my own ass. Or
do you mind?
Yeah. To that effect.
Kicking my ass. Yeah.
I'm kicking my own ass or something. But he literally was, I think.
I mean, even the things that don't seem like the bigger deal, like he rubs soap in his eyes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
That's the
I always.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying, like, it's whenever I think of physical comedian, that's the one I always think of. And I remember in Ace Ventura, he does the same thing.
Yes.
Like he's playing to be a mental patient, and he says halftime, and he slams his face down on like a bench. And I mean, hard. And I'm like, man, that looks like it. Just the commitment to it.
Yeah. I always kind of have to defer to, oh my gosh, his name escapes me, his actual name, but Kramer from Seinfeld.
Oh, yes.
Oh my God.
Michael Richards. Yeah. Just
Michael Richards.
His willingness to essentially, I'm not the ability to go like, I'm going to take it to whatever level it takes to get the laugh.
Yes.
And it doesn't, how stupid I look, how ridiculous I seem, I'm just going to go through with it. I'm going to make it work for the sake of the laugh.
Yeah. And even like when he would open the door and kind of slide in, and like just little things like that. It's like,
or
man,
whenever he's
so good.
Whenever he's smoking a lot and he looks at his own appearance.
I'm hideous. Don't look at me. I'm hideous.
Just all the, I mean, the little I'm always really impressed by the small little pieces of physicality that somebody has. Like they can, like there is, Timothy Chalamet is interesting. I was having a conversation the other day about him on Twitter because we're talking, he was in the movie Little Women, and despite what he does in that movie, he will put like little weird tinges of like he's a ballerina in it for no reason. And it really works. Like at one point, like he sits down, he does this like little spin and then kicks his feet up. And like, but he does it like a little pirouette, like switching his legs.
Yeah.
It's so like, I'm like, where does that come from? Well, like,
exactly.
Where's the impulse to be like, I'm just going to do this. Like I'm yelling at this woman.
Goofy little thing.
I'm going to do like, there's a scene. He's yelling at this woman in a ballroom, making like a big scene. And out of nowhere, he just kind of drunkenly spins around. And I'm like, what was that? Like,
yeah,
I'm really impressed at that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Those choices.
Subtle. Yeah. It's just subtle little things that are just so hilarious.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, but, all right. So there's obviously, this entire movie is great scenes, great comedic scenes.
Yes.
Which one is your favorite?
I mean, it probably just the montage, the baseball montage. Once the game starts going of him, he's like he wipes off with a broom. He uses a dustbuster. He uses an actual vacuum cleaner. All the little sight gags in between there, and checking the pitcher for substances. He's looking.
Oh yeah, he's got sandpaper,
Vaseline. A rotary tool. Yeah,
yeah.
All those.
Yeah, he's got an angle grinder.
Yeah. Like everything baseball related always makes me laugh with this movie.
Yeah.
All those fun little things. But I mean, outside of that, whenever he shoots at his car, it makes me laugh. Does anybody get that license plate? Just man, does make me laugh.
All right. There's a lot of scenes in this movie where Leslie Nielsen gets himself into a pickle.
Yes.
Gets himself, when he breaks this priceless pin and it goes in the fish tank, and then he gets bit by the fish, and he's trying to get away with it. Have you ever gotten yourself into a real big pickle and tried to figure out how to hide it up or get away with it?
I probably can try to think of those things like when I'm sure it happened 1,000 times when you were a kid.
Absolutely. Because
as a kid, you always think, well, I just need to make this better, as opposed to accepting any sort of consequences.
Right.
Because you're just like 9 times out of 10, especially when you're a kid, the consequences are 10% what you actually think they're going to be. Like, they're going to kill me. It's like half the time they don't even care. Or it's not that big of a deal. They'll take it really well or something like that. Or it's the cover-up's worse than the crime. It's a lot of times.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of times. Yeah. You could mess up, but if you lie about it, now you're in trouble.
I can't necessarily think of something where like I've done specifically that. Like I messed up and I'm like, okay, I'm trying to clean and just spiraling out of control. I'm sure there's been work things like that where, so as a software engineer, there's a lot of times you're like, okay, there's a bug. And then you go through and you fix the one bug, you fix it, and then 6 more come up. And it's like, you fix those 6, now you have 12. And then you put it all back and now you have the one bug back. And you're like, well, now I'm confused to how this ever happened. And it's there's a lot of that, and it's obviously much less lower stakes. But
Yeah.
I do the it's essentially like running down a hill and you start to lose your balance and you're like, oh no. Or anytime you see a video of a motorcycle and it starts to wobble and you're like, nope, this isn't coming back. There's no saving this.
Yep. No, I definitely did feel that anxiety in this movie of like, that feeling of like, okay, something screwed up. Maybe I screwed it up. I need to get this fixed before it comes to my boss's attention.
Yeah.
I just don't want to deal with this. And so it's not necessarily trying to cover something up. It's trying to fix a boo-boo before it goes up.
It's the classic bad dream. I still have a lot of the, oh no, there's no coming back from this.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I can't get it to the point where there's no coming back from it. You're just stopping it. You're trying to mitigate your damage.
Exactly. Yeah. You're just trying to cut your losses and be like, okay, let's just not make it worse. Yeah.
And that's we talked about it. I played poker before and I've gotten to those situations where I'm just like, oh crap, I'm pot committed to it. I know I'm not going to win this hand. All in, like but much lower stakes, but still.
All right. Final question. Did OJ do it?
Have you seen OJ, the OJ versus America? Or United States versus whatever OJ Made in America, the documentary. It's a 5-part documentary.
Yeah, I think so.
It's exceptionally done. And I think more than anything else, I've never been more convinced that he did it after watching that documentary.
Yeah.
And just like him, talking to his friends, talking to all these people, all like, just like, okay, this guy most certainly did it. And
he literally wrote a book called If I Did It.
Yep. I mean, and the civil, he lost the civil case in like record time.
Yes.
Record time. And it was, we lived through it as kids. And
that was all that was on TV.
I don't think people who weren't around cannot grasp how just ubiquitous it was. It was everywhere.
I was in fourth grade.
94.
I think I was in fourth grade.
Yeah.
And they literally stopped class, brought in a TV, and we watched the verdict come out.
Wow. I mean,
it was a big deal.
The thing I remember is every time we went to the store with our mom, so we go through the whole store, we're waiting at the checkout line. We'd always want a candy bar, but I would always see the tabloids. And it was OJ. All it was OJ, just top to bottom, OJ Simpson. And I'm just like, okay. And I only knew him as an athlete. So I'm like, oh, he's innocent, because I didn't know any better. I was a kid. Like, he's a football player, so probably didn't do it. But no, that guy 1000% killed those two people. And the juice is still loose out there in the world. Somehow on Twitter. I mean,
well, like you said, he's Teflon, it seems.
Somehow. Whatever.
But no, it's crazy.
Yeah,
you never look at a white Bronco the same.
No, you don't. So many things about white Broncos, Kato Kalin, Judge Ito, the Kardashians, Johnny Cochran, all these things. Glove.
If the glove don't fit, you must quit. They did a Seinfeld episode mocking that.
And there's an American crime. There's a miniseries, American Crime Story, about the O.J. Simpson thing, and it was really well done. It's a little lascivious, but I mean it's not like a docuseries. It's more like okay, let's dramatize this and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, well, still, but
all right. Well, man, I think I'm gonna let you out of the hot box. You're free to go, sir.
Sounds good, buddy. What is before we go? What's your film rating of Naked Gun?
It's great for what it is. It's great. I think it hits the target. It wants to be a funny comedy. It wants to be ridiculous, and it doesn't take itself too seriously. And I think they aimed at the right target, and I think they hit it.
It has very specific goals that it achieves very well. I agree.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's always difficult to these type of movies. Like, what's your star rating? I'm like, it's like, I don't know, 3.5 out of 5, but that's what I have it as. But I mean, you can't like, it's hard to, it's hard to approach with a critical eye. Like,
yes. Yeah. You're like, he wasn't serious enough, or he wasn't convincing.
Yeah. It's like okay.
The whole thing's ridiculous.
These filmmakers are doing a very specific thing. They achieved it wonderfully. They deserve what they get. Exactly.
Fair cheeseburger.
Yep. A great fair cheeseburger. Before we go, I want to say once again, thank you to David Rosen picking this episode. Musician and podcaster, host of the Piecing Together podcast, producer of the Awesome Movie Year podcast, guest on numerous other shows. Check out his music and other stuff at bydavidrosen.com. Check him out on Twitter at bydavidrosen, at Piecing Pod, and at Awesome Movie Pod. Thanks so much, David. I'm sure I will be on your podcast probably sooner rather than later talking about something else. But once again, thank you very much.
Thank you, David. I'm going to check more into your stuff. I'm interested.
He has all the cool stuff. Yes. That just about does it for this episode of The Film Critic and the Common Man. Thank you so very much for joining us. You follow me on Twitter at NebHasBeen, on Letterboxd at Neb810, on Instagram at BillMillMovies. Check out my website, icecreamforfreaks.com. You can follow my other writing on The Film Experience and Cinema Scholars. Got some new reviews coming out this week. A romance drama called Past Lives, been getting good reviews. And Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Gonna review that this week. So check me out on the other pods, like David Rosen's podcast. And I have the Daily Thews of Podcasting. Jake, where can the people find you? I assume you'll be in your car with your ever-expanding airbags.
Nah. My car's in the shop. No, I'll probably be in a wheelchair rolling down some stairs.
The best part of that is not him rolling down the stairs. It's the ejection. At the bottom, you're just like, man, really flying out of there. I've got
that Nordberg look, So
make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter, Critic, Comment, Pod. Please like, subscribe, rate, and review. Enjoy the show wherever you get your podcast. We'll catch you guys next time, and we're going to be in disagreement. We're talking Fury next week. Jake's making me watch a movie I hate. The tables have turned. It's going to be a fun one. We will catch you guys.
Revenge.
We will catch you guys next time.
See y'all.
What's the trick? What's the trick? In making my love stick. What's the trick?